Alright, what's up, boys and girls? Today we're here with Lazav, the Dimir Mastermind, and if you don't know what he does, let's look at him really closely. We're going to do a deck tech today. I'm sorry if you were looking for gameplay, but we have plenty of those already, and we'll obviously have plenty more to come. So what does Lazav do? He's from Gate Crash. He's a Dimir guild leader, or I think the guild leader. Hexproof, whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you may have Lazav, Dimir Mastermind become a copy of that card, except its name is still Lazav, Dimir Mastermind. It's legendary in addition to its other types, and it gains Hexproof and this ability. So what is Lazav? What's the point of him? He's just a hill giant that's hard to cast. Well, the nice thing about Lazav is you can become copies of your creatures that you either mill into your opponent's libraries, or you make them discard, or that you kill, or counter. So it's got a lot of utility because blue and black are perfect for killing, countering, milling, and discard. And you can do some silly things that are pretty fun, you know, copying your opponent's Eldrazi. I've seen people try to exile their graveyard in response to his trigger, which just doesn't work because once it hits the graveyard, Lazav's trigger goes onto the stack and he can become a copy whether or not that creature is in the graveyard or anymore. So let's go through what we've got. We've got islands with sweet Therese Nielsen art. We've got some swamps with different art because I don't have a lot of cool swamps. I should get more Dan Fraser originals, and we've got the John Avon swamp. I just really like this one, so I figured I'd throw it in there, and we've got the John Avon swamps of that kind. Alright, our non-basics, we've got a Fetch Scalding Tarn, Misty Rainforest. Also, we've got the, where is it? Polluted Delta here, and we have Flooded Strand. We just don't have the red-black fetch land, unfortunately. I should just get one. I just have neglected to do so. So if you want one, you should get one. Watering Grave for dual land. Underground Sea. Obviously, it's very good. Underground River. And then we've got Sunken Ruins, which is pretty nice because, you know, Lazav is very hard to cast. You just kind of want all the duels, even though not all of them are like the best, but Sunken Ruins is pretty nice, and I like it a lot. Drowned Catacomb, Dimir Guildgate. We don't have the come into play, gain 1 life land. You could probably play that instead. I just happen to have Dimir Guildgate, so I'm playing it. I guess the other one's just a tiny bit better. There's nothing to do with gates in this deck, so that's kind of inconsequential. Dark Slick Shores, which is nice. Creeping Tar Pit. Command Tower, Cavernous Souls, actually pretty nice in this deck. Lazav is really hard to cast, and when you have this, it's just a dual land that makes him uncounterable, which is very helpful. Ancient Tomb, Reliquary Tower, we have the Bojuka Bog, because you're going to be milling your opponents, sometimes you don't want them to be able to use their graveyard, and we have Bojuka Bog, and then we also have Dusk Mantle, the House of Shadow, and basically you can tap this to mill the top card of your opponent's library. Not all that great. I've never really had this be insane. Just a little bit of an inconsequential milling. And then, I mean, if somebody tutors with like Vampiric Tutor, I guess you could use this in response. And then Drown Yard, which is like so much better than that card. But rarely are you going to mill your opponents out, although I have had it happen. Alright, so we have a ramp. Our ramp is very limited in this deck because we're more of an aggressive deck. We're not much of a control deck. I found the control version of this deck not to be as good. I feel like this one's a little bit better, although it's a little bit more all-in. So Talisman of Dominance, Dimir's Signet, which is obviously on theme, and ramps your mana, fix your colors, because sometimes you'll just have like fucking Drown Yards and you need the colored mana. Soul Ring and Mana Crypt, because those go into every deck for the most part. And then we have our removal suite here. Create Pain's our only Wrath. I just got a Damnation, because Damnation's like 12 tickets now. Did you know that? It's pretty insane. EDH is becoming a lot more expensive. What I've noticed with EDH staples, they're just going to go up in price for the most part unless they get reprinted or they get redrafted on Magic Online, because the pool of players playing EDH is going to go up as the format gets more and more popular. So the demand for all those cards are going to ever so slightly increase. Plus, they might be played in other formats. So they're slowly going to go up, like Damnation. I remember a year ago after Planar Chaos Drafts was, I think, barely 4 tickets towards the end, and now it's like 12, so it's kind of crazy. Grizzly Spectacle, so it's a little bit expensive, but destroy a non-artifact creature. Its controller puts a number of cards equal to that creature's power from the top of his or her library into his or graveyard. So why are we playing such an expensive spell? Well, when you have Lazav and you kill like a 4 power creatures, you're going to be you're going to be able to copy that creature with Lazav, or you're going to also be able to mill 4 cards into their graveyard and then see what you can copy. Sometimes you kill a creature that's like 9 power, and then Grizzly Spectacle goes off. And it's just pretty sweet, and I like the art of the guy saying, "Look away." Nothing to see here. We have Far and Away. Let's zoom that in. Far, return target creature to its owner's hand and away. Usually you just use the away version. The Far is alright, but the away, the utility of both sides are pretty nice, and you can cast both of them if you fuse it, if you pay both costs, which is pretty sweet, and I like that it's a Dimir card. I like the Dimir theme. I want to make more of a janky Dimir theme, but a lot of those cards are bad. Murder, just murder. It should be a hero's downfall. Hero's Downfall, which also has Destroy Target Planewalker, but I just don't have that card. Cyclonic Rift. I really don't like this card, but I feel like this deck, since it's pretty all in on just getting through and killing your opponent, it's kind of necessary in a way, because you want to just get your opponents out of the way and kill them with Lazav, and it's a lot. I feel like this is an instance where I'll accept playing this card outside of the mono blue, like silly troll your opponent decks. I'm not gonna put this in Grand Arbiter because, I mean, just playing this on 7 mana, bouncing all your opponent's things, or it's annoying when you're ahead and then your opponent just Cyclonic Rifts your board and just like, wow, okay. Into the Royal, it's alright. I've not been super impressed with it. It could be something else. Never had it be terrible, but it's always been okay. Could probably just be another like Doomblade type card. Go for the Throat, obviously really good, and then it's been funny that sometimes I've drawn this card and it's been like against a Karn deck, and it's like I have Go for the Throat. I actually played a Karn deck. I'd Go for the Throat and Grizzly Spectacle in my opener or something like that. It was silly. Chainer's Edict, so it's flashback, sacrifice a creature. It's a sorcery unlike Diabolic Edict, which we'll get to, but it does have the utility of being cast again, which is really nice, and apparently he's killing a Minotaur. Is that a Minotaur? It looks like a goat. Yeah, I guess it is. It's a weird picture. Chainer's Edict, there you go. Diabolic Edict, sweet art, and it's a nice utility card. Sometimes the Edicts can be pretty weak in Commander because you'll play an Elf deck or a token something deck and they just kill their worst token. But there are a lot of Ultrani decks like mine, like, sometimes Rafik or sometimes anything that just goes all in on their general and you just want to kill it. And then we have Dimir Charm. And I like it because it's on theme. I like blue-black. I like the way the gold blue-black cards look. And then it has some utility, so counter-target sorcery spell isn't bad. And then it also has destroy target creature of power 2 or less. So it's pretty good early, and there's a lot of generals that are utility generals that are 2 or less power. Kill their elf, kill, their Stoneforge Mystic or whatever. And then you could always use the top ability if they search up something and put it on top, but that's never really been cast. And I like the art in this card a lot. Like how the top of this like temple or whatever it is has the Dimir spidery thing. Anyway, next time we have our counterspell suite. So we got Force of Will, always really nice. Dismiss, counter target spell, draw a card. Cryptic Command, Psychic Strike. So Psychic Strike makes the cut because it also puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard, which is, I like to do that because you have Lazav, and just milling your opponent, attacking their library is always fun. We have Spell Crumple. So I don't have Hinder in this version for whatever reason. I might have had it before and cut it. You could run Hinder or Spell Crumple. Spell Crumple, a little worse with Snapcaster, but it's better if you have Shuffle effects because it lets you draw it again. You could consider playing either or both. I think either or both is fine. You're kind of like, you really want to be aggressive, and these counter spells let you do that. Mana Drain, obviously very good, but you have huge color commitment in a lot of your cards, so Mana Drain isn't as good because you're not playing a lot of the huge expensive spells. Your curve kind of tops out at 5-6 mana. So if you counter a 5-drop, you're going to have to still spend colors, since it only gives you colorless mana. Counter spell, just countering spells, and I like this art a lot. It's my favorite counter spell art. Mana Leak, I don't like to normally run Mana Leak, but like I said, Lazav is pretty aggressive. You want to stick him and protect him, and hope your opponent doesn't do too many broken things in the meantime, and this stops that from happening sometimes. Essence Scatter, counter a creature, and you want to become copies of creatures, so if you Essence Scatter a, Woodfall Primus, this is a pretty good thing to stop it, or just all of your opponent's generals are obviously creatures. Then Daze, people don't play around Daze, they don't always expect it. Sometimes people get mad if you play Daze, but I find it pretty nice in this deck, and you have to kind of choose what you daze. Don't just daze something because you can, because you'll just put yourself behind anyway, and that's not always good. Stifle. So you want to stifle and enter the battlefield trigger. You want to stifle Terrastodons, enter the battlefield effect. You can just stifle their fetch land. Just puts your opponent a turn behind, which is nice. And if you've never gotten stifled, like turn 1 or turn 2, you'll not realize how annoying it is. And they have Pactic Negation, so you tap out for Lazav or something, and then you just protect it with Pact. And then you just start hitting them, which is nice. Alright, so next is our creatures. We don't have too many in our deck, just 9, besides Lazav. Consecrate Sphinx. You stick this and it survives for a turn or even 2 turns. You're just going to be so far ahead. Usually you can win, so it makes the cut here. It's one of our most expensive spells. Then Ralva Horror, I like the Dimir theme, so made the cut. I don't know if it's the best card. I think you probably could find a better card to play, especially for 6 mana, but I like it. That's just why it's there. I like it. And it has cool art. And there it is. So Mirko Voss, the Mind Drinker. You could always run him as a commander instead. So what does he do? He's a flying 2/4. Whenever he does combat damage to a player, that player reveals 2 cards from the top of his or library until she reveals 4 land. And they put that many cards into their graveyard. So you can usually mill like 10, 11 cards a turn with this guy, if you're lucky. Sometimes more. He attacks, so he's good. He's better than like a Mind Funeral in that nature, and he's sweet. I don't like to play with sweet cards, even though they're not always the best. Metamorph, so copy their creatures, copy your Consuming Aberration, which I just skipped. So this is one of the all-stars of the deck. So his power and toughness are equal to each of the number of cards in your opponent's graveyard whenever you cast a spell. Each opponent reveals cards on top of his or her library until they reveal a land, then puts those many cards into their graveyard. So you can just start making your opponent's graveyard bigger and bigger. Let Lazav, copy whatever creature might happen to hit the graveyard. And then in the meantime, he gets bigger, and at the same time, you're getting mill. So you can kill your opponents with mill, you can kill your opponents with him, you can kill your opponents with Lazav. He's very synergistic, and I like that. He's probably one of the best cards to clone in the deck. So that's why I like him. And then we have Metamorph, like I said. Metamorph, not outstanding, but copying one of these aberrations, even the Horror or the Sphinx, not too bad. Or even Glenelendra Archmage, so just another non-creature spell, protects your Lazav, protects your opponent from Genesis Waving for 1,000 million, and there you have it. Snapcaster Mage, so you've got a lot of utility, you've got a lot of removal, you've got some counter spells, and then we've also got some other spells that are worth getting out of the graveyard. This is kind of being blocked whenever I bring it forwards. Dark Confidant. There he is. A little greedy, but he's actually very good. I think let's say the stats. It's actually a pretty low mana curve. Well, it's loaded. I think it's like 2.9. 2.89. This little converted mana cost average. So on average, you're going to take 2.9, but not even that many because you have 37 land, which is on the low side. 37 land, you could probably run 38 if you wanted to cut something, like a probe. Well, we do have a probe, so it's like half a land, kind of, a third of a land. Dark Confidant shines. He's a must remove for the most part, and attacks your opponent, holds a sword. You don't need me to tell you that Bob is good, and obviously the good art Bob is the one to run, not the Modern Master one if you can afford to, because that card looks weird. And then Hedron Crab, my favorite card in the deck. Hedron Crab, sitting on a rock, controlling your opponents. All your fetch lands become insane. Your fetch lands with Crucible World become even more insane because you can you can basically mill them for 6 a turn, and it just gets really annoying. Puts cards in the graveyard to copy Lazav, and do some shenanigans, which I really like. I love Hedron Crab, and he's a 1-drop, and he's just so cute. Look at him, whole little Hedron. He loves them. Hedron's perplex minds, both great and small. And then you can see the full art island things in the background there. And we got our Planeswalkers. We have Cameo, gets your opponent's things out of the way, taps them down, stops you from dying, protects your other Planeswalkers, draws cards if you need to. She's just pretty sweet, and helps Lazav get an attack. Jace, I love this card. Attacks your opponent's libraries, draws you cards, draws you 20 cards, mills them for 10, does a lot. Usually it'll just +1 it just so you can get incremental advantage before you go off. And the minus, or the 0 ability, I guess I'll zoom it in. My bad. Oh, not wrong, Jace. So target player puts the top 10 cards as their graveyard, library to their graveyard, so that's pretty good with your general. And you can always go off with the bottom one. So we have Jason Mind Sculptor. Also has, I mean, all the Jaces have sort of a milling theme, sort of. Like, his ultimate exiles all cards from the player's hand and then puts them, they put their hand into their library, so they discard their whole hand and they get the as their library. So that pretty much wins the game. And, you know, you have fetch lands, you have synergies, and he just gets things out of the way. I mean, Jace is just insane, you don't need me to tell you that. Jace Bellerin, usually -1, -1, +2 him in that sequence. And you can keep doing that. I feel like +2ing him every turn is kind of greedy. I've seen people try it, I've never actually been threatened by it outside of a multiplayer game. I think in a multiplayer game, the +2 might keep people off your back, but once he gets to the high part of 20, you know, his -10, then people are going to take notice. They call him Party Jace, but usually the right way to play Jace is to --+, because you're getting 3 cards for every 2 they get, or 1 they get, so it's pretty nice. Then we have Liliana, and Liliana is just awesome. Works with Lazav. They discard whatever card, and then hopefully it's a creature, and then you can copy it. Sacrifice creatures, get them out of the way of Lazav, and Ultimate's always, obviously, very threatening. She's just a sweet card. I can't believe this card was like 12 tickets, and now it's like 50. Kind of crazy. Then we have Ashiok. He doesn't really work with Lazav. His plus ability, Exiles, doesn't mill into the graveyard. I'm kind of just trying him out. The times that I've seen him played against me, you're kind of like, you don't really want Ashiok to keep doing what he's doing because they can threateningly put good creatures onto the battlefield. So I've been kind of trying him out. He does draw some fire. Your opponents are going to be forced to attack him. And his -10 is similar to Jace's -12 for the most part. But they do get to keep their library. But it does work against all opponents, which is pretty sweet. I mean, you could probably cut him. I just kind of want to play with him, and he fits the Dimir theme, so he stays. So we have our swords, our equipment. Do I not have Lightning Greaves? I must have cut it. Yeah, I must have cut Lightning Greaves. I guess Lightning Greaves is really kind of bad with Lazav for the most part. I mean, this works with your other 9 creatures, but other than that, putting Lightning Greaves on Lazav isn't all that exciting. I guess he'd like to attack a turn earlier. But we have Light and Shadow. Once you get back creatures, in case you're getting milled, because you do have things like Mesmeric Orb in your deck where you're milling yourself as well, and this just gives you basically Demonic Tutor for your own creatures, sort of. Kind of joking. Does gain some life. And Protection, white and black, is very relevant to get through. Fire and Ice, drawing a card, doing 2 damage. Shock and draw a card, obviously. Very powerful. Gets through blue and red. I like that. Blue and green sword. So normally you don't want to play the sword in EDH because a lot of people want to abuse their graveyard. But you want to abuse their graveyard as well. 10 cards a turn is pretty nice. Gives you a lot of targets for Lazav's ability. And it gives you a 2/2 wolf, so if someone has an Edict, that stops you from getting hit by an Edict because you have a 2/2 next to him. So I like that a lot. And then we have Sword of Feast and Famine. Makes them discard a card and untaps your lands. And this is one of the green swords to let you get protection from green, because those tend to be the hardest creatures to attack through. So that's kind of why I started bottom in mind. It's also pretty nice. So there you have the sword, and then this is kind of our card. Alright, sorry about that. So we are back to our card draw. Future Sight. A lot of our spells are actually pretty cheap, so Future Sight has a little bit more value. We don't have as much ramp in order to cast the cards, but I love Future Sight. One of my favorite cards. Sweetheart. Phyrexian Arena, so it's like Dark Confidant, costs less life. It's a little bit harder to remove as well. I mean, there is a lot of enchantment removal running around, but generally creatures are easier to deal with unless you're playing against mono green. Ristic Study, everyone hates playing against this card. Has sweet Therese Nielsen art. I'm going to move this so it's not blocking by the text. And we have Ancestral Vision, draw 3 cards. Pretty nice turn 1, turn 2. Gets a little bit worse later on, but other than that, it's pretty nice. Factor Fiction. So once you've got Lazav out there beating down, you can kind of hold up mana, either counter spells, play removal spells, and then just cast Factor Fiction. And Therese Nielsen art's obviously the better one. There's a theme going on. Demonic Tutor. Not really card draw, but pick out whatever card you want. Obviously extremely powerful because it only costs 2 mana. I'm never really sure what to Demonic Tutor with this deck. Sometimes you want some kind of janky mill, sometimes you want like a land because you're just kind of mana screwed. But and Soul Ring isn't as powerful in this deck as it is in others because you'll have a hand like Lazav, some counters, and a removal spell. It's not like you want to play a huge bomb unlike most other commander decks, so it's a little bit different. Probably why I like playing the deck. And Liliana's also red because I was borrowing it from Tarasco. I just don't know how he borrowed it back. Well, he took it back. It was his card. Jitaxian Probe, so if you're holding a counter, this lets you see what you want to play around or see what your opponent's doing. Self-explanatory. Usually don't play this in most of my decks. In this deck, I feel it's a little bit better because you are playing so many counters. You want to kind of see what's going on, and it's so annoying when your opponent probes you because they just see your whole hand and they know what to play around. So it is powerful. I wouldn't play it in a control deck. This is more of an aggressive control deck, so it's a little bit better. And works with Snapcaster and things like that. So then we have our utility/random cards. We have 2 Time Locks, Capture of Jingzhou, and Temporal Manipulation. Just because sometimes you just want to hit twice with your Lazav, and this lets you do that. Otherwise, I really wouldn't play these in a control deck. I think usually my other control decks, why you have like my Grand Arbiter might have just 1, or might not have none. I might have cut both of them, but just 1 is usually okay. But both of them are actually pretty good in this deck. And they're good with Snapcaster. Crucible, you've got... Do I have Strip Mine in this deck? This might be the deck I just don't have Strip Mine in. Look at that, guys. There is no Strip Mine. So there it is. Crucible, I didn't even realize that. There's no Strip Mine. Go with your fetch lands mainly. If someone kills your lands, obviously they're good as well. So there is a reason to put in the other... Oh, you're also milling. You're milling yourself. You have a Mesmeric Orb, the next card. So when you have Crucible, you're just basically putting tons of things into your graveyard. And when you have Mesmeric Orb, you're putting a lot of the cards into your graveyard, and Crucible lets you get the lands back out. So Mesmeric Orb, whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. This card is insane, and it's insanely annoying to play against if someone has like a Lazavish deck. Because if you tap 4 lands in your turn and play a creature, you're going to have to mill 4 cards in your graveyard the next upkeep. And it's just going to continue to compound as soon as you tap more and more lands. People will naturalize this usually as soon as they can, unless they're a graveyard deck. So there is a weakness of this deck, and it's playing against a Carador deck, because once you start going off by milling Carador, his general costs basically nothing to cast, and it's just going to get more and more cheap, even if you kill a Carador, so you kind of want to be able to hinder it. Or you want to just be able to do broken things to Carador before you can do broken things to you. So that is a weakness. There are a lot of graveyard decks, so that's something you want to keep in mind. On Magic Online, at least, there isn't a ton of those decks. In the 1v1 section, you're probably going to see more of those on 4-player. Just keep that in mind. That is a weakness of the deck, but the deck is still fun to play. Mind Crank. So whenever opponent loses life, the player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library into their graveyard. So when you attack for 3, they put 3 cards into their graveyard. If you have a sword, they put 5, giving you more targets to copy. And also, if you have this lovely card down here, Bloodchief Ascension, so at the beginning of your upkeep, each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life, you may put a quest counter on this. Whenever a card is put in an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Bloodchief Ascension has 3 or more quest counters, you may have that player lose 2 life, and you gain 2 life. So, what does that mean with a Mind Crank? So, whenever a card is put in a graveyard from anywhere, they lose 2 life, and whenever someone loses life, they put that many cards in their graveyard. So it's infinite combo, you kill your opponent. But you have to have Mind Crank out, you have to have Bloodchief Ascension out, and you actually have to do damage to your opponent, or have them, mill a card. I've had it happen a few times, it's pretty sweet when it happens. Sometimes I just killed people with Bloodchief Ascension without Mind Crank, because you're just hitting them. Wait, is it Mind Crank? Hold on. Or you're just milling them with like Jace, or with sort of, like, cause I had Sword of Body and Mind and Bloodchief Ascension active, and you just mill 10, they take 20. I think I posted a video like that, actually, against, it was a land destruction deck. If you haven't seen it, check my playlist for Lazav matches. I think it was one of the first ones with this deck I played. And it was actually the only reason I won the game. Then we have 2 Reanimate spells. We have Reanimate and Animate Dead. Pretty good. They're extremely powerful cards. They're played in Legacy, so it kind of shows you how good they are. You could play the other Animate Necromancy as well, but It's not really a reanimator deck. It's just kind of incidental. I mean, you're putting a lot of things into your opponent's graveyards, and sometimes it's good to reanimate them before they do. So that's the deck. If you have any questions, let me know. Any comments, things you would change. I think like Dinrova Horror is probably just really way too expensive for what it is. You could probably, I mean, Recoil. I should just get a Recoil. Recoil is probably just better, which is return target permanent to its owner's hand. That opponent discards a card. I didn't talk about. So I have Shadow of Doubt. Right. So it's Dimir, so it obviously should be in the deck. Target player or players can't search libraries this turn, draw a card. So you can basically stifle your opponent and draw a card, or if they demonic tutor, you get them. I've gotten people like who cast Cultivate, or like things of that nature, and it just usually you just end up cycling it because you just never get your opponent, or they just happen to cast it when you're tapped out. But it has sweet art. It's Dimir. It's a cool card. You can cast for blue black hybrid mana, so it's usually pretty easy to cast. And then Mind Twist, taking your opponent's hand. Who else loves it? You could play cards like Hymn to Turok, be more aggressive with the discard. That's the only discard card. Mind Twist is just insane. I guess you could always demonic tutor for that one if you wanted. My more controlling version had like Shieldred. It had more Lilianas. It had less of the counters, I think. This one has a lot more counters, and I don't know. I kind of like this build. I think it's fun. It's pretty aggressive. Sometimes you kind of stumble. You just draw a bunch of land, and you have Lazav with nothing to do with them, because there's not a ton of card draw. You don't have like a Blue Sun Zenith or other things to draw cards with. So, if you have any questions, let me know. Post a comment. Sorry if I've been responding to your comments on YouTube. I haven't made a Google Plus account yet. I'm just kind of hoping they come back on it. It looks like they might not. It's kind of annoying. I actually only got no comments on my last video, which is kind of sad. So post a comment. I know you guys are like the regular videos better, but we should have more janky decks up soon. The war deck will be out with some more warmongery things. See you next time.